Hey there, champ. Week 3 devlog isn't ready yet, so I spent the little time I do have participating in a game jam. But don't fret, I only worked on this for 3 hours. That's right, the Trijam game jam is a 3-hour jam. Luckily, this is reserved for just dev time and art, so with enough planning, I should have a unique and polished game to submit, right?
Oh, you know what would be kind of cool? I actually kind of like that, because I don't think anybody else is going to go for that type of game.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't.
It's a dice game, so what kind of theme should we go for the art? We could make it like childlike horror, right? So something like that. Something a little eerie, but as if it's trying to be cheerful.
I knew I would be strapped for time, so the idea I came up with was drawing 2D characters and using Godot's billboard effect. Sort of how it's done in Doom.
Oh, you know what? Actually, a mechanic could be each round, so you gain one more die, and if one of them hits the wrong number.
Unfortunately, this had to be cut. Had I been able to implement it, I do think it would have made the game a lot more interesting though.
Yeah, okay. So that is it. Yeah, I think that's gonna be a good game. Cool. Alright, I'm locking that in. Peace.
With the time ticking, I immediately started setting up my scene with nodes I knew for sure were going to be used. My idea is that the player would be sitting at a table, so I added a player camera and scripted the controls.
Yeah, boy. That's it.
I added some lights to my scene to make building a little bit easier and began working on modeling the dice itself. I just threw some sphere meshes on each face and called it a day. I was having trouble getting the correct faces to show up, so I moved on to the UI. I quickly made a main menu, which ended up getting scrapped in the end. I also made a retry menu for when the player dies. And with my remaining dev time, I got the rolling logic working as expected. With my remaining 55 minutes, it's time for art, sound effects, and to polish the scene. I had an idea in my head of what characters should look like. I created my goth girl, my clown, and whatever the hell this is. His name is Bot3, but he also likes being called Bob. Hi, Bob.
Dennis? Who is this?
It's our friend Bob. Say hi, Bob.
I imported the images and dragged them into my scene. I didn't want the table to be a solid color, so I created a small texture using GIMP's pattern filled feature, imported it, and assigned the texture to the chairs and the table, and holy shit, that doesn't look too bad. Next, I gotta get the sound effects in.
So for her, what do we think she sounds like? I'm thinking something like a and then we'll do, let me just look at that guy again. Whoa.
So lastly, in my final 10 minutes, I went on to fix the lighting and set the scene. And all in all, it doesn't look half bad for being made in 3 hours. Here's a short snippet of the gameplay that was submitted to the game jam. This was a really fun jam, and it was really interesting seeing what other devs came up with in such a short amount of time. Even though I would have loved to add more features or have had more time to spend on creating the assets, I definitely learned how to come to terms with cutting features in order to make deadlines, but it also showed me how much of a negative effect cutting features can have on the overall game. With that being said, is this game fun? No, not really. If I had more time to implement some of my other ideas, one of which being adding an additional dice to roll every time a player gets out, or in between rounds, adding some sort of a shop mechanic where you could purchase items that would give you an edge over the rest of the table, could have made things a bit more interesting. I also ended up cutting the camera controls and putting the camera completely on rails for this jam, forcing the player to look at the bot on their turn while looking at the table during the player's turn. I did get feedback on that, and in a way, I regret making this decision. However, in the current scope, it did feel like the correct move all in all, but I'm not sure. Why don't you let me know down in the comments. But that was my 3-hour game jam. If you liked seeing the process, give the video a like and subscribe to see more videos like this. Next week I will be releasing my new devlog, going over the 3D modeling process and creating the core game loop. So hit the bell as well in order to be notified. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.